book reviewing. I think calling it literary criticism is a slightly kind of highfalutin term of it, because I'm writing middle-brow book reviews for mainstream newspapers. Nevertheless, you're reading critically. You spend a lot of time reading stuff that's not crap and not great. And there's a sense that you can, after a while, lose almost, a sense of where the sides of the swimming pool are. You're like, oh, is this good? Is it better than that? Is it worse than that? And every now and again, which is enormously helpful, and as it were, kind of palate cleansing, and it gives you a kind of baseline to reference, you hit something that you just know is extraordinary, or for that matter, actually, something that's really terrible. You suddenly go, actually, yeah, this is what getting it wrong looks like, sentence by sentence, or this is somebody that, I remember being really excited years and years ago, actually, reading Annie Proulx's Close Range, her short stories. And I'd been reviewing a lot of okay stuff. And suddenly I just was halfway through, and I thought, God, these are major. This is absolutely enduringly good. She knows exactly what she's about.
What stood out about the book?
Particularly its short stories. We were talking earlier with Sarah Hall on this panel discussion, and Sarah said the big thing with short stories is you need to know your entrance strategy and your exit strategy. And so in a way, the short stories, it's, where do they come in? Is the pacing right? Does it leave, does it tail off? Does it leave on a, obviously short stories quite often do that, bang, here's an epiphany, whatever. But, the dialogue was, every sentence lived, was alive. Lived, is that the word? Anyway, every sentence had life, you just knew that what was in there was what needed to be in there, and there wasn't extraneous stuff, and, she left out the stuff that needed to be left out, if that makes sense.
How does reviewing a book differ from literary criticism?
What you're doing as a newspaper book reviewer is allied in some sense to what academics are doing when they're looking as academic critics at how fiction works. But it's still though it may share many characteristics, it's not exactly the same thing. You're writing 600 words, maybe 1,200, maybe 2,000, 3,000 if you're really, being given a sort of LRB style forum. But, you can ask questions and make points about books that an academic, needn't or wouldn't have to or wouldn't want to. So, you might be interested, on a banal level, is this worth the price of entry? Is it boring? Is it, an academic literary critic isn't really interested in whether a book's boring or not. He might be privately, but he's not going to write an ELH. I found Marlowe dull as hell. But, you're fundamentally, when you're writing a newspaper book review, you are front and centre, you're telling your readers whether something's worth their time, and you'll be telling them, in the same way the academic critic might, why it's worth their time, if you think it is. But, in a way, you're publishing recommendations, or attempts to dissuade people from reading terrible books.
What gets you writing?
I think I'm so much of a journalist, I think that having a publisher say, we will publish your book, handed in on such and such a date, there's nothing that energises you quite like a deadline.
You've been listening to a HiBrow production. HiBrow, Folio Fiction Festival and the British Library. Interview with Eimear McBride, writer. What was your upbringing like?
I had an Irish Catholic upbringing in the west of Ireland, and I grew up in quite a conservative household. I went to a convent school.